Before the god king of Angkor could march his war elephants, he had to fight a battle his enemy never saw coming. The Devaraja didn't just command armies, he was a living god who carried the cosmos on his shoulders. One missed ritual, one ignored omen, one skipped consecration could doom 10,000 soldiers before they ever left the capital. We've reconstructed the full sequence of sacred preparations using Khmer inscriptions, temple carvings, and historical records. What you're about to see isn't superstition layered onto warfare, it's the actual first battle. Think about what that means for a moment. Every enemy kingdom on the map had generals, scouts, and spies watching Angkor's roads, but none of them could see the war that was already being fought inside the palace walls. The Khmer didn't separate the sacred from the strategic because to them, those were the same thing. A king who skipped the cosmic sequence wasn't just impious, he was tactically blind, marching into a fight the gods had already decided. So what did that sequence actually look like, and how did it begin? It started the way every day in Angkor started, with the king's body, before sunrise, at the center of a kingdom that believed his breath held the empire together. That dawn light breaking over Angkor Wat wasn't just beautiful, it was a diagnostic, and the king's priests were reading it like a wound. The Devaraja wasn't a ruler who claimed divine favor, he was understood to be the divine axis around which the entire empire rotated. His body wasn't a metaphor for the kingdom, it was structurally, theologically, the kingdom itself. If his ritual state was compromised, the land's fortune was compromised, and that meant the army's fortune was compromised before a single elephant moved. Think about what that actually means for a general planning a campaign. The most critical military variable wasn't troop strength or supply lines, it was the king's cosmic condition. Neglect the rites and you weren't being pragmatic, you were marching into battle already defeated because the spiritual ledger had already closed against you. Every priest, every astrologer, every sacred attendant in that palace existed to keep that ledger balanced. So when the decision for war arrived, the king didn't reach for a sword, he walked toward the purification chambers. Before a single war elephant was armored, the king himself had to be remade. Priests led him into a stone chamber where sacred water, drawn from the temple's innermost reservoir, was poured over his body in a slow, deliberate cascade. The water wasn't symbolic. It was charged, consecrated through days of Brahminic chanting until it carried the force of divine contact. What emerged from that chamber wasn't the same person who entered, and every witness in that courtyard understood the difference. The air smelled of burning camphor and wet stone, and the priests' voices never stopped, layering Sanskrit syllables like mortar between the ritual's moving parts. His body, once dried and anointed with sandalwood paste, became a vessel, not a man preparing for war, but a god authorizing one. And that distinction mattered more than any troop count or supply line ever could. The consecrated king who stepped into the morning light wasn't asking the gods for help. He was one of them, and his Brahmin advisors were waiting to confirm it. The priests who purified the king didn't step aside when the rites were done. They stepped forward, because the next question wasn't military, it was cosmic. Could the heavens actually be read like a document, a living text that told the court whether thousands of men would live or die? The Khmer believed they absolutely could, and the royal astrologers held that document in their hands every single day. These were not casual stargazers. They were trained specialists who mapped planetary positions against a sacred war calendar inherited from Hindu astronomical tradition. Jupiter's placement determined whether a campaign would carry divine momentum or bleed out in the jungle before it began. The moon's phase governed which direction an army could march without walking into spiritual opposition, and the wrong phase meant the wrong direction meant certain ruin. Specific birds, specific cloud formations, even the behavior of the king's own elephants on a given morning could cancel a campaign that had taken months to prepare. If the omens were bad, the king did not march. Not because he lacked the will, but because marching without celestial sanction wasn't bravery, it was suicide dressed as strategy. The astrologers would recalculate, the priests would watch, and the court would wait until the sky finally gave its answer. The omen had spoken, and now every weapon that would enter the battlefield needed to speak back. Brahmin priests moved through the royal armory in the hours before dawn, reciting Sanskrit verses over each blade, each spear, each war axe laid out on consecrated ground. This wasn't maintenance, it was activation, the moment when iron became an extension of divine will. At the center of the ceremony stood the Priya Khan, the sacred sword of the Devaraja, and it carried a weight no forge could measure. This sword wasn't simply the king's weapon, it was the physical proof that heaven had granted him the right to wage war at all. Priests anointed the blade with sacred water drawn from the tonle sap, mixed with flowers offered to Vishnu and Shiva both, binding the cosmic order to cold steel. The sword was then held aloft, while the king himself recited his divine lineage aloud, claiming his mandate from the gods in front of the entire assembled court. Without that moment, the army waiting beyond the palace walls had no spiritual authorization to move. Each consecrated weapon was then wrapped in white cloth and carried, carefully, reverently, toward the war elephants already being armored in the courtyard below. Those consecrated weapons didn't stay locked in the temple. They passed into the hands of men who had to be made worthy of carrying them. Before a single soldier crossed the empire's frontier, every man in that army underwent a binding ceremony that tied his fate directly to the king's divine authority. Priests moved through the assembled ranks, reciting oaths that were not pledges of loyalty in any ordinary political sense. They were contracts with the spirit world, witnessed by gods and ancestors alike. To break that oath wasn't desertion, it was cosmic betrayal, and the consequences followed a man beyond death. Each soldier received protective markings, sacred syllables inscribed on skin or cloth that were believed to seal him inside a field of divine protection for the duration of the campaign. The army wasn't just organized, it was consecrated, transformed from a mass of men into a single sacred instrument of the Devaraja's will. Think about what that does to 10,000 soldiers standing in formation before a temple at dawn. Every man believes the gods have already seen this army and approved it, that the spiritual war has already been won, and that he is simply the physical arm of a divine verdict already handed down. That collective certainty, that shared weight of cosmic purpose, was perhaps the most powerful weapon the Khmer ever forged. Every soldier had sworn his oath, and every spirit contract had been sealed. Now the war machine had to actually move. But leaving Angkor wasn't simply a matter of marching through the gates, because Angkor wasn't simply a city. It was the axis of the known world, the point where divine order pressed down into human soil, and the king was its living pin. To pull that pin out, even temporarily, required a ceremony as precise as surgery. Priests consecrated the threshold of Angkor Thom's southern gate with offerings and fire, ritually transferring the king's divine charge from the fixed temple into his moving body, wrapped in sacred formulas and the smoke of 100 burning resins. War elephants moved in ranked formation, their flanks painted with protective glyphs, their steps measured against the beat of sacred drums. Each gate tower watched the procession pass with its stone faces, and those faces weren't decoration, they were witnesses. The moment the last war elephant cleared the threshold, the cosmic center had shifted, and the campaign had cosmically begun. The procession has left the city, and the temple towers are already shrinking behind 10,000 marching men. What you just witnessed wasn't pageantry layered over a real military operation. It was the operation's first and most decisive phase. Every act of purification stripped away doubt and replaced it with something armies desperately need: certainty. The omens didn't predict victory. They manufactured the psychological conditions that made victory more likely. Weapon consecrations bound every soldier to a shared story, and shared stories are what hold a battle line when fear says run. The oaths didn't just promise loyalty, they made betrayal cosmically unthinkable, which is a far stronger lock than any chain. The God King didn't perform these rituals because he believed in magic and hoped for the best. He performed them because a man who believes the gods have already decided in his favor fights differently than a man who only hopes. Call that superstition if you want, but the Khmer Empire held for 600 years.